ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2015 Beirut Memorial Observance Ceremony. Please find your seats. The ceremony will commence in 5 minutes. It is also requested that you turn off all electronic devices. Thank you.
Good morning. Today, we as a community continue a tradition. I'm Ron Bauer, the Vice Chair of the Beirut Memorial Advisory Board, who with the City of Jacksonville conducts this annual observance at this location with the support and assistance of Marine Corps Installations East. Please rise for the invocation which will be offered by Father Bill WAUN, the pastor of Our Lady of Good Counsel Catholic Church. Please remain standing for the presentation of the colors and the national anthem.
Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, we commend to your gracious mercy all of our Marines and sailors, soldiers, airmen, and all others who gave their lives in Grenada, and most especially in Beirut, in the service of peace and for the liberties we now enjoy. Comfort those who continue to mourn their loss. Protect those who keep watch over our freedom by their service in the military, and maintain our commitment to the high and lofty values upon which our country was built. And this we pray in the name of our holy and merciful God. Amen.
March on the colors. Please be seated. On Sunday morning, October 23, 1983, 32 years ago today, a violent bombing took place at the headquarters building of the United States Peacekeeping Force in Beirut, Lebanon. This event, plus subsequent actions in Beirut and Grenada, caused the deaths of 273 U.S. Marines, soldiers, and sailors. Most of these men were from Camp LEJEUNE and were friends and neighbors of the citizens of Jacksonville and Onslow County. Almost simultaneously, another bomb detonated in another section of Beirut, killing 58 members of the French peacekeeping force. This ceremony remembers the events of that day and honors those who lost their lives in the cause of peace. While today's observance focuses on those Americans who lost their lives, let us also honor those who were part of the French peacekeeping force and our grateful appreciation for the Italian forces who helped rescue our troops with a moment of silence. Our community has vowed to never forget the events of October the 23rd, 1983, and that is why this observance has been held annually. Thank you for being a part of renewing our pledge to never forget and for your participation in the honor to those named on this wall behind me who lost their lives in the cause of peace. I would like to give a special welcome today to the family members and the Beirut veterans who are attending. In addition to this ceremony, the Military Order of the Devil Dogs will conduct their annual ceremony at the Beirut Memorial Monument at the Camp Geiger Circle. The ceremony is set for 2 p.m. and those attending should use the entrance to the Marine Corps Air Station to access the site. Signs and sentries will direct attendees to the site. Earlier this morning, there was a prayer vigil at this site for the families and survivors of the bomb blast. These observances are important to our community as October the 23rd, 1983 holds a special place in our community's history and the history of the Marine Corps. Mayor Sammy Phillips continues the tradition of carrying the torch of leadership and commitment to the military families in our community to never forget the sacrifices of military families and their service members. A native of Jacksonville, a graduate of Jacksonville High School, North Carolina Wesleyan College, East Carolina University, and the FBI Academy, Mayor Sammy Phillips served on the City Council after retiring as Deputy Police Chief. In 2007, he was the first person ever elected for a 4-year term as mayor. In the last 32 years, there have been only 6 mayors of Jacksonville who have stood in this setting for this observance. Today, Sammy Phillips continues the solemn pledge of this community to never forget the events of this day over 3 decades ago. Please welcome Jacksonville Mayor Sammy Phillips.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of a caring community and my fellow City Council members, I welcome you to Jacksonville, to this memorial, and to this observance. There are many familiar faces in the audience today, and I want to acknowledge members of the Armed Forces, and particularly those Marines and sailors that are present, some of our interested citizens that are here, community leaders, the Beirut veterans, all other veterans, and we have several local veteran organizations that are represented here today also. But most importantly, I'd like to recognize the families of those folks that gave the ultimate sacrifice to this country. All are welcome to this observance, and it is with my honor to renew the pledge that we will never forget October 23rd, 1983. It's a date that will be etched forever in the memory of this community. Our community is a changed place since that day. We mourn for the loss of life. We grieve for their families and loved ones. We mourn for the unrealized potential of lives that were lost. We mourned as a community, one community. We were overwhelmed by the events that occurred. So many were lost, and this loss touched so many. So intertwined were we as a community that we mourned together, both military and civilian. That joint mourning, a reliance of faith and community and compassion of others, has been a common bond of remembrance since 1983. We have, and we continue, to offer our compassion, our thoughts, and our prayers to the families and loved ones whose names are on this wall, and we honor them with our observance and our remembrance. While we mourn our loss, we also honor the sacrifice by celebrating today. We celebrate that we have worked together as a community of both military and civilian members for a better place. We are a caring community as reflected on the city's seal. And caring is the spirit that caused this memorial to be built. So moved by this loss of life 32 years ago today, that immediately this community sought ways to remember and mark that tear in the fabric of our community. 32 years ago, tomorrow, a class at Northwoods Park Middle School actually began a project to plant a tree in remembrance for each one of those souls that we lost on that date in October of 1983. A few years later, this community gathered at this location to unveil this memorial, which grew from that effort. The memorial calls the remembrance of that day to have a tangible presence. Today, I'm proud to announce that we have planted 273 trees in our new Beirut Memorial Grove. The grove serves as a single place for the previous trees, which were spread widely, but the majority of those who perished did this together. So we felt like the representation of these trees, as a remembrance to them, they should all be together. The city has accepted responsibility to maintain the grove in perpetuity in front of the Department of Transportation, or in front of the Camp Geiger area, which some of you are familiar with. This city will continue to maintain, like I said, forever. No loss is as sad or devastating or heartbreaking as that we suffered, and those family members suffered, who lost their fathers, their husbands, their sons, or cherished relative in this peacekeeping mission. That pain is enduring, agonizing, and emotional. 32 years may soften, may dampen, or diffuse some of the pain. But we know the loss is still real, and that frequently the source of thoughts of what might have been, if not for the events of October 23rd, 1983. This community felt that loss in an intense, poignant pain and took action. That the nation joined the effort to plant trees, then to build a memorial, and then to fund this magnificent statue is a testament to the sorrow we all felt and the gratitude this nation has for our armed forces. That we stand here on this anniversary, as we have before, is both healing for this community and is our duty to do so. That this memorial has inspired others to be built. Here is testament. This community has advanced the spirit of caring, remembering, and sharing memories like these. Consider the vast therapeutic Vietnam Memorial that's now complete. Consider the 9/11 Memorial that serves as a focus for our annual observance on that day. And now a bronze statue reminds us graphically of the uphill battle the Montford Point Marines had to endure. Soon observances will be held at the Montford Point Marines Memorial in the rise beyond the trees to the right. The first phase of the Museum of the Marines is also under construction, and even more observances and ceremonies by this community can be held here at that particular site. The designers have identified other sites where, unfortunately, the future may require other memorials. The duty to remember is taken very seriously by this community. Consider the Freedom Fountain, dedicated to all of those who have passed through this community as a result of their service to their nation. While some serving the country are only in our community for a very short period of time, others become our definition of natives. No matter the length of their stay, all are integrated in the fabric of this that makes this a great place. And it contributes to our dedication to not forget what each of these memorials represent and the daily sacrifices of training, deployments, and the impact of the military on family life. On behalf of the City of Jacksonville and the City Council, I want to invoke the memory of Doris Downs, whose leadership caused this memorial, and give thanks to those who serve on the Beirut Memorial Advisory Board and others who have advanced this and other memorials as part of our duty to never forget. They and the mayor of the city of Jacksonville are the holders of a powerful pledge to never forget the service of those whose names are etched on the wall behind me. Jacksonville will never forget to remember these people. Jacksonville will never forget the debt that we owe them for reminding us of the importance of a supportive civilian community for a grateful service and a deserving military community. And Jacksonville will never forget the lesson their passing has taught us, that we are not two communities, but rather one, military and civilian, whose lives are intertwined. That is our community. Today, while we mourn the loss of our military neighbors in 1983, we give them great tribute by celebrating the durable bond that has been created here. It has withstood years of testing, but each of us who assume the responsibility of elected office in this community, and each honored leader of these area bases, must equally share the duty of caretaker for that bond and diligently work together to continue and strengthen it during our transitory time in these leadership positions. Today we celebrate and we remember that the sacrifices that these brave men gave for the advance of freedom also gave a lasting legacy of community bonding for the city of Jacksonville and our military neighbors. That spirit endures, and with it, our memories and compassion for their families. Our commitment to you, the families of these brave men that sacrificed their lives for their country on a peacekeeping mission in a land far away. We give you our solemn promise that we will never let that light go out. We will always remember them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the commitment to these families and for the city's continued commitment to this effort. The Freedom Fountain, the new Beirut Memorial Grove, and the future of things to come at this site continues a permanent commitment to recognize how unique this community is. Our bases have had exceptional leadership over the years. The command is now being handled by an equally capable leader. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commander, Marine Corps Installations East and Marine Corps Base, Camp Lejeune, Brigadier General Thomas D. Widley.
Thank you, Ron. And on behalf of Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, Marine Corps Air Station, New River, may I offer a personal thanks to Mayor Phillips for your many years of sustained leadership of this caring community of Jacksonville, which has done so much for our military service members, their family members, and the installations that sustain them. As a relative newcomer to this area, having arrived this past summer, it did not take me long to understand and appreciate the unshakable bonds that arose from the tragedy that was Beirut, and you have been a significant part of it. To the families and friends of the fallen, Beirut veterans, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am honored to join the mayor in welcoming you to this 32nd observance ceremony to remember the 273 courageous peacekeepers who were the first to give their lives in America's long war on terrorism. I also want to especially acknowledge a number of individuals who are here with us today that were directly impacted by the Beirut bombing in different ways. On the stage with me, Ms. Peggy STELPFLUG, who sadly lost her son Billy on that terrible day, yet did so much to contribute to the historical accounting of Beirut by writing extensively about it. Your efforts to help the future generations of Americans understand the context and the importance of this tragedy are greatly appreciated. Major Mario Rosati is also here. As a young Italian Army lieutenant serving as part of the multinational force in Lebanon, he personally mobilized search and rescue efforts in the immediate aftermath of the bombing. We're exceptionally grateful for your presence here. The Marine Corps is forever indebted to you and to your team for your life-saving actions in Beirut those many years ago. Thank you so much for coming and representing your country. Escorting Major Rosati is Commander Jake Schneider, United States Navy retired. Commander Schneider's distinguished career began as a combat decorated Marine in Beirut and spanned several decades through America's involvement in the liberation of Kuwait, in the Kosovo conflict, and in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Thank you for being here, for your many years of service, and particularly your contributions in Beirut. And finally, to all of those Beirut veterans and family members who came from far and wide to uphold the solemn responsibility and privilege of carrying the torch of remembrance so that these 273 names etched in the granite memorial behind me are never forgotten. Today, you do so again with great pride and honor, closing ranks around your loved ones and each other. We are humbled by your presence, and on behalf of the United States Marine Corps and the grateful nation it serves, we owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude for your collective sacrifices. Thank you all again for coming, and Semper Fidelis.
Thank you, General. The Beirut Memorial Advisory Board has been inspired by the acceptance of our observances, and pledged to the families of those who suffered that loss. Today, Ernie Corner of Ernie Corner Ministries represents that spirit with a new composition for this observance.
Good morning. It is indeed an honor to be here in your presence this morning. This new song was inspired by a gentleman who comes to this site on a daily basis. He served in the Marine Corps and served with and was a friend to many of the names on this wall. This song was inspired by something that I saw him post on social media one day. One of the most important things he does here is he educates the visitors who come here on the sacrifice made on this day in 1983. And I would like to try to tell this story through his eyes this morning. I come here almost every day with a pain that never ends. The names carved within this wall are my heroes and my friends. I find solace here away from all the turmoil and the noise when I step onto this hallowed ground in memory of our boys. We served together years ago in a land so far away, a country torn by war and strife that lived in fear each day. A warrior knows the dangers every time that they deploy. I won't forget what I survived, and I won't forget our boys. Our boys sure loved this country. They stood tall and proud and true. Nothing meant more to them than the red, white, and blue. For every breath of freedom America enjoys. The price was paid in part by our boys. I see lots of faces here as seasons pass on by. Some come to learn, some come to grieve the precious loss of life. It's my duty to remember, and for now and through the years, I'll tell the story of our boys to everyone who will hear. Our boys sure loved this country. They stood tall and proud and true. Nothing meant more to them than the red, white, and blue. For every breath of freedom America enjoys, the price was paid in part by our boys. For every breath of freedom America enjoys, the price was paid in part by our boys.
Thank you, Eric, for your continuing support to the families and for your contributions. Each year, this observance has performed the duties of remembering. Each year, the observance has recognized the families of those whose names are on the wall. Lance Corporal Bill J. STELPFLUG is one of those names. His mother has written books on this event, has taught high school English, and is the mother of 5, including Billy. She's married to the former Air Force Lieutenant William J. STELPFLUG, a fighter pilot in the ceremony in France where they met. She has adopted an active role in the remembrance of this event with 3 books dedicated to this time. Today, it is with great pride that we recognize Peggy STELPFLUG as our guest speaker. Ms. STELPFLUG.
To all who came here to remember, and all who made this Beirut Grenada Memorial Observance possible for the Marines and servicemen of the Beirut Multinational Peacekeeping Force, thank you. As a proud representative of the Beirut families and the mother of Lance Corporal Bill J. STELPFLUG, the youngest of our 5 children, I would like to recognize Billy's brother Joe, his 3 sisters, Laura, Kathy, and Christy, their spouses, Catherine, Al, Mike, and John, and my 9 grandchildren. Billy's nieces and nephews. Billy always wanted to be an uncle. He wasn't sure about marriage at age 19. He once wrote from Beirut, "I dreamed I got married last night. I woke up in a cold sweat." Maybe someday. I also want to remember my husband Bill, a retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and former blue-eyed fighter pilot, who came to these ceremonies until his death in 2011. As so many of you who took time from busy lives to come today, we will continue to hold dear the memory of these honored men. Billy, like these men, has a story that relates to many young servicemen. His story is told in his letters and poems and the writings of others, especially those of Mary Ellen Jakowski and I in our collected book, Voices from Beirut, The Peacekeepers Speak. As a former English teacher, I encourage all of you to write or record your stories. Writing is a distinct human endeavor that allows us to decipher the past, capture the present, and envision the future. Billy's story is part of that human history and military legend. When Billy was 4 years old, we lived in Florida near Homestead Air Force Base while my husband Bill was deployed in Vietnam, flying the F-4. Billy became ill, and nothing seemed to cure him. He stayed in bed with no spark of interest in his eyes. After numerous trips to the base doctor and a present of a toy machine gun, nearly as big as he was, he stood upright on his bed, his thin pajamas hanging loosely, and held his weapon close to his slender body, grinning from ear to ear. I think I knew then that I had a warrior on my hands. Years later, when my husband retired from the Air Force, we settled in Auburn, Alabama, where we both taught. Billy enjoyed playing in the deep woods and winding creeks surrounding our neighborhood. His boyhood friend, Robert Mount, who would be assigned to a prowler squadron aboard the carrier USS John F. Kennedy, located off the coast of Lebanon in October 1983, wrote of those days. Billy STELPFLUG was a great pal and a great guy. He was an equal part compassion, fast twitch muscle, and mischief. He had a lively imagination and was so full of restless energy that it took all my strength to keep up with him. We, with our other friends, would strike out into the woods behind Willow Creek subdivision, shotgun a case of Budweiser, and commence to fighting, usually dueling with long tree branches. It was to your advantage to keep Billy, a rangy 150-pounder, at bay with a stick, because direct hand combat with him was to invite disaster. I was a strapping 200-pounder. Quite often, when I challenged Billy directly, I would find myself face down in a cow patty, with my arm bent way up behind me. Billy's style was to immobilize you, add some pain, and then order you to call him master. I called him master many times. Billy's lively imagination that his friend Robert described also led him to poetry. One of the poems he wrote in high school was called Alabama Night. The air is still, thick and hot, drenched with the fragrance of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. The dull yellow lights of the fireflies dance to the constant tune of the crickets. A dog barks somewhere. Small invisible animals noisily make their way through the scrub and pine. Lazily, we sit back and listen to the music of an Alabama night. Billy, with a poet's heart and a warrior's attitude, wanted to be part of the strongest and toughest. He chose the Marines. After watching his brother and sister study hard at Auburn University, he decided to see the world and serve his country before he settled down to a formal education. After graduating from high school, Billy left for boot camp at Parris Island, September 1982. He was a good and faithful letter writer. In a letter to his sister Kathy, he described the pit. The pit, also called the Rose Garden, as Marine Danny Joy explained to me, is the area where the Marines do their calisthenics. Covered with sawdust, chips, and sand, the pit installs discipline and also breeds sand fleas. It inspired a philosophical comment from Billy. How is everything in Auburn? Here it is very mild, except when you take a 5-mile hike or go to the pit. I have discovered the theory of relativity. Sitting on a cement floor for hours is better than standing, and standing is better than running, and running is better than the pit, and the pit is the worst. After graduation, Billy came home in December. His winter service Alpha uniform fitted him perfectly. He wore it to the mall, getting attention from friends and passersby. However, when his leave was up, he struggled to button his trousers or jacket. The extra pieces of turkey and pecan pie took their toll. On January 22nd, 1983, Billy wrote his brother Joe from Camp Geiger. Hey, how y'all doing? I'm doing pretty good here, excepting that I'm in the Marine Corps Infantry. Actually, I'm doing things that really strike my fancy. We have been out in the wood for the last 2 days, freezing our you-know-what off. All our water froze, and we had to crawl through the frozen sand and dirt for 1/4 mile under barbed wire, all the while being shot at. That night, we did it again, except that it was booby-trapped with extremely loud and unnerving explosions. 3 a.m., we packed up and marched 15 miles back home, sweating like a dog in 25-degree weather. To top it all off, we got our next duty station, and I got the 1/8, which is going to Lebanon. Don't worry about me. I'm doing what I enjoy. I am glad that I'm in the infantry. We have a lot to be proud of. Billy's sister, Christy, captured the commitment of these young men leaving for Beirut in a poem called I Know These Boys. I know these boys in their uniforms, handsome, slim, and fit, smiles on their faces with family at graduation. I know these boys, ready to go to war with their troop, proudly posing with their guns or in their tanks. I know these boys who were courageous explorers and hard-headed kids whose parents and siblings knew they had no fear. I know these boys with their self-confidence and determination and the willingness to do the mission they were trained to do. I know these boys. They are Marines. The arrival of the Marines as part of the multinational force in August 1982 gave hope to the citizens of Beirut. Unfortunately, Lebanon's 7-year-old civil war was not yet resolved when the 24th Mao arrived May 1983. Private First Class Dave Medeiros recalls, quote, "We filled more sandbags than can be counted. We had rotating showers because of water issues. It was funny watching guys in PT shorts and shower shoes walk to their monitored showers wearing their helmets, flak jackets, deuce gear, and rifles. It always seemed like the morning after your shower, you were picked to burn the diesel toilets. Boy, that was fun." He later reported, "Things took a turn for the worst in August. Firefights, shellings, and casualties started to become a regular thing." On September 22nd, Maurice F. Huckle wrote, "Lately we've been receiving artillery shells just about every day. We had 4 KIAs and 29 WIAs. I do believe we are doing a good thing for the Lebanese people, but I wish there was a better way." Joseph P. Milano, a Navy corpsman, recalled those casualties. "I can't help thinking of those parents of Marines killed, how they feel. I wish I could tell them we tried to help. I wonder how long it will take before people forget about these Marines. Their faces burn in my memory. I'll never forget." Billy wrote in October, "Well, I've always dreamed about being in combat, and here I am, a teenager, giving them hell. We take a lot more than we give, though. I think when I return stateside, I will take a bus back to see what it is like to come home so slow and happy instead of leaving so fast and sad. I hope you won't get mad at me if I lie on the sofa too much. See you soon. Love, Bill." Letters home became more reflective. Sergeant Michael D. Mercer wrote his parents, "You may think me pessimistic, but tonight there's something I must say. I think you misunderstand prayer. It isn't order and delivery. You pray for my safety, as I am sure the families of the other Marine fatalities probably prayed for them. Chances are slim that I will be killed or even wounded. If I am, try to accept it. Trust in God's wisdom and mercy. I am not afraid to die. I just can't stand to think that your life would be embittered by my passing. Dry your tears and smile. On October 22nd, Saturday, I stayed up late, sometime after 12 a.m., a great sadness and I squirmed in my chair, trying to break loose, finally becoming exhausted. When I turned on the TV Sunday morning, I heard the news of the bombing. Billy's death was confirmed 3 days later. Together, our family worked its way through the awful anguish, pain, and sadness. A few months later, I received a call from Danny Joy's mother. She said Danny had found one of Billy's poems when Danny, Father George Pucciarelli, and Reverend Danny Wheeler, the last survivor rescued from the ruins of the building, attempted to salvage personal things. The 46-line poem was titled "The War King Calls." This is the refrain. And the war king calls his subjects to battle, to hear the rockets whistle and the very ground to rattle. When the war king calls, everybody listens. The trucks are revved, the knives all glisten, the desert sun shines on a million guns. Many will die, and will give their soul to the war king's call. This desert of tragic loss, watered by the human spirit, bloomed with healing and hope. Beirut mothers Joan Muffler and Judith Young organized a support group that produced Beirut Connections, a newsletter that they said gave information on ceremonies to be held, plaques to be dedicated, monuments to be built, and scholarships to be founded, all in memory of our loved ones, unquote. In 1986, the city of Jacksonville Council formed a Beirut Memorial Task Force. The city and camp were becoming one. Bradford trees were planted. A park was dedicated. The wall was built. Artist Abby Goodwin created a statue commenting, "There isn't enough granite or bronze in all the earth to express gratitude for these brave men." During the following years, the Beirut Veterans of America was formed, the Root Scoop newsletter revitalized, and online information centers developed to fulfill the duty to remember. In October 2013, I received a letter from Carlise McClinton in Gulfport, Mississippi, who wrote of the far-lasting influence of the Beirut Marines. I remember very well the reports of the attack in Beirut in 1983 because it was exactly that attack that compelled me to enlist in the Marine Corps. I could no longer justify sitting at home, drinking beer, while men my age and younger were laying down their lives overseas. Every good thing in my life since that time, professionally and personally, has been a direct result of my having joined the Marines. He continues, I have a son also in the Marine Corps. I see this as proof that the influence of the sacrifices shouldered at Beirut will continue through generations. My son and I have visited the Beirut Memorial at Camp Lejeune together. While I did not know those names on the monument, I felt a debt of gratitude to each and every one of them. I still do. The healing from the loss of those related to the peacekeeping mission continues. Another of Billy's poems expresses the complexity of healing and the complexity of life. There is no need to know. I slept under the heavens and saw the stars in the endless black of night. I explored thoughts of the vast unknown, things I did not understand, and the possibilities my mind could not grasp. But I do understand. There is no need to know. There is only need to wonder. Today, it is not only our duty to remember, but to celebrate life with the courage needed to face daily living. We must accept the hurt with the glory, the anguish with the pride, the despair with the duty to live life while we have it, to the fullest with love, hope, and compassion. Billy will always be what he wanted most to be, an uncle and a United States Marine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. STELPFLUG. We are happy to be part of the memory of your son and the others on the wall. We are honored to have with us today again the 2nd Marine Division Band under the leadership of Chief Warrant Officer 3 Jack K. Davis, continuing their tradition of participation in this observance. Brian D. BEAUDREAULT currently serves as the Commanding General for the 2nd Marine Division. He has an impressive history that has involved superb leadership of forces in the Pacific, Asia, Africa, and both coasts, as well as the Central Command assignments. Today he represents the Commandant of the Marine Corps and the deliverance of the annual Beirut Memorial Address. Major General Bordeaux.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Commandant of the Marine Corps and all Marines around the globe, active and reserve, foremost, I extend the deepest gratitude of our Corps to all Gold Star family members of Beirut Marines who died serving with the men they loved and they unselfishly serving the country they loved. I'd like to thank all those determined and visionary individuals that 32 years ago took a tree planting campaign and ultimately produced this impressive memorial where the greater Jacksonville civilian and military communities gather each year. And currently under the leadership of Mayor SAMMY PHILLIPS, and thank you, Mayor, for all that you do throughout the year to sustain this one-of-a-kind relationship. And also a deep thanks to the many Jacksonville municipal officials, to the advisory board here that help organize and enable the safe execution of this event each year. Of course, in full partnership with Brigadier General Wiley's team at Marine Corps Installations East, and to all of our ceremonial participants from across Camp Lejeune in the 2nd Marine Division, and in particular the leadership from the 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. Thank you for supporting this annual observance. Your battalion landing team 1-8 brothers are looking down and acknowledging all of you with an oorah and Semper Fidelis. Before I recognize some other distinguished guests, I would like to relay an email that I received forwarded by Wayne Morris and John Kopka this morning, and it's from General Gray. And General Gray says, "I'm deeply saddened that I have to miss the memorial service. I feel and am responsible. We made the promise in 1983 that we would never forget our warriors that we lost that day, nor their families, nor their loved ones. They all remain in my heartfelt thoughts every day and will forever. Warm regards and Semper Fidelis, Al Gray." Some other distinguished guests I'd like to recognize this morning who are in attendance: Lieutenant General Gary McKissick, Lieutenant General retired, Major General Lee Miller, the Commanding General of the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force, Major General Robert Dickinson. We have Major General Ed Usher, Brigadier General Bob Castelvi, CG, of 2nd Marine Expeditionary Brigade, and the Deputy Commanding General of the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force. Brigadier General Chuck Scirotti, Commanding General of the 2nd Marine Logistics Group. Brigadier General Mrs. Wiley of Marine Corps Installations East. And Brigadier General retired and Mrs. Vercotteren. And I believe we have Major General Lefever's wife with us as well today. Thank you for being here. We have many colonels, captains, commanding officers, sergeants, majors, command master chiefs, friends of Marines of Beirut, and many veterans I see. I extend a warm welcome and a good morning to all of you. We're here today to remember and honor the fallen, to never forget, to keep our pledge to those fallen warriors and the families. Dozens of memorials around the world commemorate the Marines and sailors and soldiers who gave their lives for their country on this day. From the planting of 241 trees in Haifa, Israel, on a ridge looking towards the city of Beirut, to the cedar of Lebanon planted at Arlington National Cemetery. However, there is no equal when it comes to location, nor is there a more fitting memorial to remind visitors of the extent of the sacrifice that was made by noble men pursuing a noble mission in Lebanon than at this annual observance at this memorial. So I thank each and every one of you who is here today and who continue to ensure that we always remember these great patriots. As a division commander, the best way I can do that today and every day is to ensure the forces I command are constantly ready to deploy forward on short notice, and that they have the highest degree of confidence in their mission, their leaders, their training, their equipment, and faith in one another, and they will have a working level of understanding of the culture, the threats, and the environment they'll face before they arrive in theater. Our Marines and sailors are out in the world making a difference every day. We maintain 3 reinforced infantry battalions forward deployed in Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. Forces from this division have operated in 45 countries over the last 10 months, and they stand ready alert back here to support everything from disaster relief to reinforcing our forward deployed forces anywhere around the globe under any circumstances, just as Lieutenant Colonel Ed Kelly did with BLT-26 when he led his battalion via C-130s into Beirut Airport shortly after the bombing to provide immediate relief to Lieutenant Colonel Gerlach in BLT-18. The Marine Corps didn't slow down on 23 October. The Marine Corps, it is notable that 2 days after the bombing, BLT-28 under then Lieutenant Colonel Ray Smith landed on Grenada in the largest military operation since Vietnam. Along with Rangers, the 82nd Airborne and Special Operations Forces, Marines helped to quickly secure the island, liberated medical students, and denied the Soviets and Cubans any militarization of the island. In the 1980s, 2nd Marine Division forces continued to operate at the tip of the spear for the Corps and for the nation. I will tell you, as evidenced over the last 14 years and into today, any climb, any place, we remain ready to answer the call with lethal forces, whether forward deployed or adhere at home station. Your Marines continue to be prepared to successfully execute missions across a broad spectrum of operations, and they will fight and win, just as the nation expects of her Marines. As I continuously scan the strategic landscape and anticipate the next mission, it's easy to see that there is a world of chaos swirling around us. The nation seeks to rebalance to the Asia-Pacific. Russia's on the move, and our senior leaders have identified Russia as the greatest threat to the United States. China has an increased appetite to expand its territorial claims. North Korea is governed by an unstable dictator. Africa always has an assortment of challenges around the continent, from containing pandemics to fighting terrorism. Cyber attacks come at us from every direction. The space domain is becoming increasingly congested and contested. Undersea is becoming increasingly contested. The Arctic and high north are now drawing increased competition. And the Middle East is the most unstable I have seen it during my time in service. Given all those challenges, it is tough for me to foresee any fewer forces being committed to the Middle East for some time to come if we hope to contain, but dare I say control, any further unraveling of that region. If we want to truly control that environment, we need more forces, a lot more forces. And if anything has changed in the Middle East over the past 32 years, it's that the problems are broader and more complex than in 1983. But I want to principally focus today on Iranian activity, the main sponsors of the 1983 attack. Their actions have clearly accelerated the destabilization of the region, and their malign influence has increased, not diminished, over the years. If there is any doubt, just look at the three failed or failing states of Yemen, Syria, and Iraq, and the common denominator is Iranian-sponsored activity in all three. The fact they are now openly aligned with Russia and Syria is reason for concern as they try to reshape the Middle East to suit their interests. As an Iranian national associated with Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, carried out the Beirut attack against our forces that resulted in the death of 241 of our friends, fellow Marines, sailors, and soldiers, your family members. As we remember the fallen, we must also never forget who is responsible so that history doesn't repeat itself, and we demand a full accounting. Despite Iranian denials, the attack on BLT-18 barracks was an attack that clearly had some degree of Iranian support, Syrian collaboration, and we know the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps was training Hezbollah fighters in the Bekaa Valley. After the French barracks was also attacked by terrorists on that same October day, with the loss of 58 French paratroopers, the French responded by attacking those Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps targets in the Bekaa Valley, a smart choice. 8 days after the attack, our Commandant, General P.X. Kelly, pointed out the terrorist threat by saying, "Let me say with all of the emphasis I can that there are skilled and professional terrorists out there right now who are examining our vulnerabilities and making devices which are designed to kill Americans, lots of Americans around the world, in further acts of mass murder by terrorism. Let there be no doubt about it. His words would prove sadly prophetic and still describe the environment to which Marines deploy today. We know this bombing was not an isolated attack, rather the beginning of a campaign of terror, and terrorism remains one of the most enduring national security challenges we face today. I'd like to rewind the tape a bit further than 1983. I believe that the root of our terrorist challenges in the Middle East began in 1979 with the onset of the Iranian Revolution. Iran had declared their hatred for us, and they twice seized our embassy in Tehran. The first attack occurred on Valentine's Day, 14 February 1979. It was a 3-hour-long seizure by Fedayeen militants where Ambassador William Sullivan surrendered the embassy to save lives, but where Sergeant Kenneth Krause, one of the 19 Marine security guards, was taken hostage for a week, tortured, tried, and sentenced to death before President Carter and Ambassador Sullivan secured his release. In September 1979, I started my freshman year at the University of Massachusetts. There's a fairly sizable Iranian student population at that time. And I remember, I easily recall the 4 November embassy attack and the seizure of 66 hostages, 14 of who were subsequently released over time, with 52 remaining for the remainder of the time. And I also recall watching blindfolded Marines and other American hostages being paraded on camera. And it evoked some pretty strong outrage on campus, me included, and across the country. There were instances of violence against Iranian Americans, or those who might have even looked Iranian in certain parts of the country. And I remember that happening in Springfield, Massachusetts specifically. ABC Nightline was born, and we received a nightly reminder from Ted Koppel as the crisis dragged on from days into weeks, into months, and finally, after 444 days of captivity, those hostages were released shortly after President Reagan's inauguration. The aborted rescue attempt into Iran on 21 April 1980, Operation Eagle Claw, was a bold move but resulted in the death of 3 Marine helicopter air crewmen and 5 U.S. airmen after aircraft collided in the Iranian desert, codenamed Desert One. From that tragedy and failed attempt came the Holloway Report and led to the creation of our Special Operations Command in 1987. These first deaths countering terrorist acts of Iranian extremists were not in vain. And we've gone on to develop and field the most capable special operations warriors on the planet today, one of whom I'm proud to call my son. As a young man, I wanted to carry on the legacy of combat service of my father and 2 brothers. My father served in World War II, my 2 brothers in Vietnam. But while the embassy seizures and the Marine involvement in 1982 and 1983, that further crystallized my plans to seek a commission. I was commissioned in May of 1983 and was watching events unfold in Lebanon. The April 1983 bombing of the embassy, by Lebanese Hezbollah, the Islamic Jihad that killed 63, including 17 Americans, including 1 Marine. I watched the escalating conflict in Lebanon between August and October of 1983. And I was awaiting my class start date, which was 30 October 1983 at the basic school. Like everyone, I was shocked by the number of casualties, and the seriousness of the meaning of my commission became very real, very fast. As hours and days passed, the toll in Beirut kept increasing. News quickly spread amongst my high school classmates that once we learned that one of my neighbors and high school acquaintances, Sergeant Stephen B. Lariviere, Stephen was killed in the bombing. He's a member of 2nd Recon and was assigned to BLT 1-8. He grew up 2 streets away from me in Chicopee, Massachusetts. A year younger than me, he was a football player, I was a soccer player. Tall, handsome guy, square-jawed, poster-type Marine. Steve was one of 10 children with 4 brothers and 5 sisters. And he was serving in the Marines to save up money to go to college and pursue a career in the animated film industry. We know those dreams were cut short. Steve never made it home to attend the weddings of his 9 brothers and sisters or be that role model for the 14 nieces and nephews and counting. He was a great Marine. He took the hard road through recon, and he met every challenge head on. And he is indicative of the 240 other great stories that go with each and every name on that wall from that day. and he was posthumously promoted to sergeant. In September 1984, with the support of Iran, the Islamic Jihad again attacked our diplomatic mission, the East Beirut Embassy Annex that was relocated from West Beirut, killing 24, including 2 American service members, among them Chief Warrant Officer Kenneth Welch from the Army and First Class Petty Officer Michael Wagner. It was discovered that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had built a mock-up of that embassy annex, and so there was absolute clear linkage to Iran. On 17 February 1988, Colonel Rich Higgins, a 2-tour Vietnam veteran and former company commander of Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines, right here at Camp Lejeune, while serving as a senior military observer for the UN Military Observer Organization, was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by Hezbollah. A year and a half after his abduction, date of death, he was declared deceased on 6 July 1990, and his remains were finally recovered on the 23rd of December 1991. In 1996, a Saudi-born, Iranian-supported Hezbollah sympathizer attacked Khobar Towers, killing 19 U.S. airmen, and the mastermind was taken into custody 14 years later in Lebanon on a flight from Iran using an alias and an Iranian passport. In Iraq, during 2004, Iranian-backed Shia militiamen, the Mahdi Army, fought against Marines in Najaf. While Shia groups continued to target U.S. forces throughout the Iraq campaign with IEDs that had explosively formed penetrators, a lethal skill the militia groups picked up from the Iranians. Strangely enough, we now find ourselves on the same side of the fight in Iraq, backing the Shia militias who seek to defeat ISIL like we do, while we remain on opposite sides of the fight in Syria, where they seek to retain Assad in power along with the Russians. Again, a complex world filled with wicked problems. In 2011, the FBI disrupted an Iranian Quds Force plot to kill the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the United States. The plot was in motion, and their plan was to hire a Zetas drug cartel member out of Mexico and plant a bomb in a Washington, D.C. restaurant frequented by that ambassador. The suspect was arrested at Kennedy International Airport after Mexican authorities refused his entry. He was a naturalized U.S. citizen and carried both U.S. and Iranian passports. This conspiracy was conceived, sponsored, and directed by Iran. In 2015, currently have plots, according to the news reports, of Hezbollah plotting to kill both the Saudi and Qatari ambassadors to Lebanon. One, because the Saudis would like to recognize the legitimate government of Lebanon, and the Qataris because they may come in on the side of the Arab forces to try to get rid of Assad in Syria. The future concerns me. Iran continues to advocate for the destruction of Israel. They continue to test their medium-range missile systems, and we'll see how closely they abide with the International Nuclear Agreement protocols. Meanwhile, their Hezbollah proxies in Lebanon are as well armed and as powerful as ever. The sacrifice of our Marines in Beirut was not in vain. We are a learning organization. It was recognized that the U.S. had much work to be done to defend against and counter terrorist warfare. We created Marine Corps Security Force FAST units to deter attacks and safeguard diplomatic missions during periods of heightened vulnerability. Force protection considerations became a primary planning consideration. Rules of engagement and policies governing the arming of sentries were reviewed and improved. Human intelligence and signals intelligence capabilities have vastly improved to more readily identify the threat. We much better understand the terrorist organizations that operate around the globe, and the importance of integration as a joint force. The combat care and evacuation and en route care of wounded warriors has nothing but improved over time, particularly the last 14 years. Most notably, the creation of the Special Operations Command has been a global force multiplier for killing and capturing key terrorist leadership. And our Special Operations Forces and conventional force integration and supporting counter-terrorist operations continues to improve daily. Over the last 32 years, I've been privileged to wear this uniform The sacrifices of the Marines at Beirut has shaped me and the Corps in which I serve. It is with great humility that I express my gratitude to all gathered here today, to the families and friends of our fallen, to the community officials who serve as Jacksonville's indissoluble link to Camp Lejeune's Marines, to the Marines and sailors here today. Let us always remember and give thanks for the noble men that risked it all to give peace a chance in a troubled land. Their names and accomplishments are forever captured in the history of our Corps, and their sacrifices will never be forgotten. Our work is not done, and we will not rest. We will not rest as long as the evil persists. Your Marines are ready. Follow me. Semper Fidelis. God bless the Marine Corps in this great country.
Thank you, Major General Boudreault. Your leadership and your remarks are very much appreciated and timely. We are honored to have here today the Jacksonville High School Chamber Singers, who are inspired by and led by the talented Mr. Ryan Mold. They will give us two selections, Blades of Grass and Pure White Stones, arranged by Keith Carpenter, and Flanders Fields, arranged by Roger Emerson.
Between the crosses, row on row.
Every year during our observance, it is our custom to lay memorial wreaths at the Beirut Memorial Wall. Doing so today symbolizes this community's lasting memory and appreciation for those who have passed, as well as our continuing appreciation for their families and loved ones. The first wreath presented today is to honor the unique connection of our military and civilian communities in Jacksonville. Jacksonville Mayor Sammy Phillips and Major General Brian D. Boudreault will present the wreath on behalf of our caring community, along with Mr. Woody Myers, an original member of the Beirut Memorial Advisory Board and the builder of this memorial. We are honored to have also representatives of the 8th Marine Regiment, the 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, Commanding Officer, Lieutenant Colonel Paul C. Tichy, and 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, Sergeant Major Jonathan D. Martin, will present the second wreath in honor of those who lost their lives in Beirut and Grenada. Brigadier General Thomas D. Wiley, Commander, Marine Corps Installation East and Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, and Colonel Timothy M. Salmon, Commanding Officer, Marine Corps Air Station, New River, are to present the third wreath, honoring the memory of our local Marines and sailors who have been killed in accidents while training for our defense. Let us also remember the 58 French peacekeepers who died on this day 32 years ago. Please rise for these honors. Please remain standing for the retirement of the colors and for the benediction to be given by Navy Lieutenant David R. Jones, Chaplain, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment. Also remain standing for the music honors to the branches of the armed forces. Retire the colors.
Gracious and almighty God, on this sacred day of bittersweet commemoration, a day on which the tide of emotion swells with tears of anger intertwined with the somber reunion of old friends, we give thanks to you, O Lord, that our nation has a position of great responsibility among the nations of the world. We ask for your continued strength to shoulder the burdens of the duty to which you have placed upon us today, our duty to remember. We remember the tenacity, the courage, and the strength of the peacekeeping warriors whose names are forever etched in stone on this wall. As we mourn, give us peace, dear Lord. We remember the sacrifice of the loved ones and the brothers left behind who bear scars both seen and unseen, but whose names may remain unknown. As we heal, grant us peace, gracious God. We remember that these men came in peace and lost their lives in defense of the very freedom for which we will continue to fight today. As we stand, Almighty God, grant us courage and grace. In these duties, help us to remain always and forever faithful. In your most holy name we pray. Amen.
stand in silent remembrance to give honor to the families while they move forward to the memorial area. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our observance, but our duty to remember continues. Thank you for attending those on this wall this day. My lips were